Hey everyone, Mitch coming from the Commander's Core Studio. Welcome to the show. So, spoiler season is kind of weird because, well, they had a ton of cards spoiled at the end of the day yesterday, and so still some things that I probably want to cover because, my goodness, there's some really crazy things, but also a quick little kind of like sidetrack right now in spoiler season 2 because, like, we're going to be going just off the rails just a little bit, and then we're gonna come back. But yeah, apparently we got another spoiler. This one, though, from the D&D Secret Lair, again, which, you know, are those cards that are eventually going to be printed back again as Magic cards at some point. But for right now, we have got, well, a pretty spicy, brand new mono red commander that is, well, yeah, let's look at it. Here we go. Themberchaud. I'm gonna go with T Dragon. There we go. A 5/5 dragon with trample that costs 4 red. When it enters the battlefield, he deals X damage to each other creature without flying in each player, where X is the number of mountains you control. Okay, that's spicy. Also, you may exert Themberchaud as he attacks. When you do, he gains flying till end of turn. Okay, so what in the world? Oh goodness, a dragon that cannot fly. Unless it really exerts itself. It's like, all right. I mean, I guess I haven't seen the movie. I'm not familiar with this character in D&D. And yeah, apparently a dragon that does not fly. And now there are other dragons in Magic that don't fly, but yeah, it's just kind of funny. It has to exert itself. It's get really tired in order to actually fly. So that's nice. And again, a 5/5 trampling dragon for 7 mana. That does not fly unless you exert it. And I probably should remind you what exerting is, just in case you don't know, because I think this is a mechanic from a little while. I think Amonkhet was exerting. Regardless, an exert creature won't untap during your next untap step. So basically, you get so tired that you don't untap. You're like, oh, gosh, that flying was difficult. Okay, next turn, I don't untap. But then after that, I can get back and then maybe fly again. But then I get tired again. Regardless, yeah, a 5/5 temporary flyer with trample for 7 mana is pretty terrible for today's standards when it comes to stats. But that ETB is, oh my gosh, spicy. So first up, this is basically a repeatable board wipe on an ETB. And yes, there are ways to use and abuse it that we'll talk about here in a bit, based on the number of mountains you control. Now, of course, you're not going to be taking out other flying creatures. But, yeah, the vast majority of creatures are not flying. If you're playing against your opponent's Dragon's deck, you might not want to play this commander against the Air Dragon because you're not going to be taking out any of their creatures. You'll be taking out the players. Yeah, and so again, that's the other part of it, though. You're hitting each player, including yourself. Now, there are some ways to take advantage of that. There are some ways to prevent some of that damage, too. We'll talk about at least one of those ways here in a bit and to really take advantage of it. But yeah, based on the number of mountains you control, it's pretty spicy. So the longer the game goes, the more this is going to hit for on ETB. And like I said, there's ways to use and abuse this ETB. Ways to get it more than once, of course. And, I mean, yeah, obviously, if this commander gets dealt with, it goes back to your command zone replay. But that can become quite expensive. So let's find some ways to get around that. And make sure that we can actually use this. So your opponents, at a certain point, are going to have a very difficult time keeping any creatures that aren't flying on the board. Of course, you can have other ways to actually deal with flyers as well. You can have flyers yourself that are going to avoid this board wipe and be able to just, you know, stay out there, essentially. And you can get those through without exerting them, probably, and flying. And exerting them and flying, you know what I mean. And then also maybe some indestructible creatures you can utilize as well. Now, you are in red. Obviously, you don't have access to green, so you don't have the best ways to, you know, land ramp. But, of course, you've got certain ways to land ramp, including some that I absolutely love, of course. Now, of course, on these quick takes, I'm going to take you through budget buys, cards that are less than $1 that I'm going to be considering for this commander, and then cards that are more than $1 that I'm going to be considering for this commander. And again, this is one of those commanders that, yeah, is going to be reprinted at some point as a Magic version. And typically, I will mention those Magic versions are usually a lot cheaper, at least for like the Stranger Things Secret Lair one as an example. I think there's like a $20 or so. The mono black one is like $20. And then the actual, you know, Magic version of it is like 20 cents or like $2 or something like that. Regardless, a lot cheaper, like a tenth of the price. So when it comes to this one, if you're, you know, wanting to wait for this one or just proxy it, go for it. So, yeah, you don't necessarily have to pay like the big price tag because it's a Secret Lair card. Regardless, let's get into those budget buys first. And the first one, here we go. First up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble. Oh my goodness, does that feel good to say in a quick take? Because yeah, I mean, obviously, it comes to ramp and whatnot. Yeah, they do work with certain commanders, and Wayfarer's Ball is a great card and absolutely love it. But I want to highlight on this one because obviously in mono red, there's only so many ways that you can actually get lands into play. There's only so many ways to land ramp. Again, if you don't have access to green, basically every other color really doesn't have too many ways to do it. So Wayfarer's Bauble, pay 2 tap, sacrifice, go get it basically into play tapped. A fantastic turn 1 play, basically a turn 2 rampant growth if you get it down, early enough essentially. And yeah, I would go get a mountain, put it into play. So great, there you go. You're off to the races again. The more and more mountains you get into play, the quicker you get them into play, the quicker you're going to be able to get your commander out, number 1, and number 2, the more damage you're going to be dealing with your commander, which of course, I mean, once you get to that 7, that is going to probably take out the vast majority of creatures that are ground creatures, of course, and then also be really punishing to you, well, I mean, to everyone, to your opponents too, but yeah, if you are able to take advantage of that damage more than your opponents will, you can, of course, take them out quicker, and we'll talk about some ways here in a bit. Next up, though, Sad Robot. Now, Sad Robot is quite sad because Sad Robot does not have flying. So Sad Robot is going to get burninated to the ground by this brand new Dragon Commander. 2/2, Golem, when it enters the battlefield, may search for life for a basic land, put it in play tapped. Perfect. So again, another way to land ramp. Go get a mountain, get it into play, get your mountain count up. You want, did I say mountain counting? Mountain count? Did I say that? I don't know. Get your mountain count up. There we go. And the more and more mountains you have, the more and more damage you're doing. And again, yeah, just a great way to ramp and essentially get you there. You're going to want to have a good amount of mountains in this deck and not too many non-basics. We'll talk about some here in a bit. But yeah, also, Sad Robot helps you out when it dies. So yeah, hey, get your commander in play. Take your own Sad Robot out. Great, because when it dies, you draw a card. So yeah, again, this not having flying is actually probably a good thing. So you can actually take it out yourself. Next up, Burnished Heart. Yes, again, yet another way to land ramp. Again, there are very few ways to land ramp, but you need to take advantage of as many as you can with a commander like this. 2/2, Elk, pay 3, sacrifice, go get 2 basic lands and play tapped. Again, 2 mountains, great. So again, not very efficient when it comes to actually, mana-wise. When it comes to explosive vegetation, essentially effects, those typically cost 4 mana in total, right? When it comes to green, go getting 2 basics from your library, putting them into play. This costs 6 mana in total. You can spread it out over 2 turns, obviously. So yeah, I mean, if you get this down just on turn 3, great. Turn 4, you sacrifice this. Turn 5, you get a mountain into play. Turn 6, or you get turn 5. Sorry, turn 5, you get that mountain into play. Now you're at, 7 lands, essentially. And then you're going to be able to, take out your opponents with your commander. There you go. Or take out their creatures, at least. Next up, Pen of Prosperity. This one you need to politic a little bit. And again, this can be a little hard because, well, your commander is going to be taking out your opponent's creatures, most likely. But maybe you find a player that doesn't really depend on creatures as much. Maybe like a Spell Slinger deck. Maybe one that, more so depends on, creatures maybe that do have flying or have indestructible, etc., etc. Enters battlefield under control of opponent of your choice. Pay 2 tap, draw a card. Then you may put a land card from your hand on the battlefield. Pen of Prosperity's owner draws a card, and that player may put a land card from their hand on the battlefield. This one, again, you need to be able to convince that opponent because this is them activating it, not you. You need to convince them to actually dedicate themselves to utilize this because they're helping themselves out, right? And it does help them out. Obviously, it does help you out, too. If you're not very good at politicking, I'd probably stay away from this one because you are going to need to do some convincing with a commander like this. I think, again, where you are taking advantage of the number of lands you have in play, essentially. You need to make sure that you are convincing enough for that player. So again, if you're not very convincing, if you're not good at politicking, maybe ignore this suggestion. Next up, Terrain Generator. A non-basic land that I will highlight. Again, I wouldn't utilize too many non-basics with a commander like this because, again, you are dependent on mountains. Or again, I should say non-basics that don't have the mountain subtype, or mountain type. Anyways, tap for a colorless, pay 2 tap, you may put a basic land card from your hand on the battlefield tapped. So this actually, I'm so excited, is finally within my budget. My goodness, I was actually surprised to see this underneath $1. I think it's because it got reprinted a little while ago. But regardless, it hasn't been budget for a long, long time. Again, with a monocolor deck like this one that is just going to have a bunch of mountains. And again, you really need to focus heavily on mountains. This is just another way to ramp that's just in play, essentially. Just, hey, get a land from your hand into play. Great. You can basically get 2 lands in a turn. Fantastic. Another one that I would mention that I think I forgot to bring in the slides. Mirrored Landscape, of course, a great way to ramp as a land. In one that, again, just adds to your mountain count, essentially. So, yeah, make sure you're considering a few non-basics, but ones that are very effective like this one. Speaking of which, Gearport Orrery, very effective. Each player may play initial land each of their turns. Now, again, this does benefit all players, so keep that in mind. That being said, it can really heavily benefit you. Again, if you're running a really good amount of mountains in your deck, you get this into play, you get 2 down per turn, which should just be great. Again, you can start having your commander deal 10 plus damage quite easily, again, if you're heavily focused on getting a lot of lands into play. which is just not typical for, a mono red deck, but it's pretty spicy for this one. On top of that, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player has no cards in hand, they draw 3 cards. Yeah, you can, get to the point where you have no cards in your hand. This can help you replace those cards in your hand. Essentially, draw more, get more lands into play, find more effects to really use and abuse your commander's ETB as well. Speaking of which, well, okay, actually, first let's talk about Koth. I forgot what the order of the cards were. Koth is a planeswalker that's 4-star in loyalty, +2, search library for a basic amount card reveal up in your hand, then shuffle. So again, this can work really well with those like terrain generators, the Ori essentially. Those kinds of cards that get lands out of your hand into play. So again, basically being able to just keep your hand chock full of mountains, get them into play, and yeah, get really far ahead on lands. Also, -3 Koth fire resistance deals damage to target creature with the number of mountains you control. So this can be actually a good way to take out your opponent's flyers, essentially. So again, if your opponents have flyers, hey, sorry about it. I've got other ways, of course, to take them out too. Outside of this, there's of course other board wipes that you can utilize to take out flyers as well. And then also -7, this is huge. You get an emblem with whenever a mountain enters the battlefield under your control, this emblem deals 4 damage to any target. Oh my goodness. So again, if you get up to that, which you can, because again, your commander is a repeatable board wipe. Again, one that essentially is going to take out the vast majority of creatures, maybe even all the creatures most of the time. Again, if they don't have any flyers, they don't have indestructible creatures, you can just keep taking out opponent's creatures, protect your planeswalker. It doesn't take too long to actually get this to that 7. Again, +2, +2, next turn, -7. Essentially, if you're able to do that, your commander does not deal damage to planeswalkers, so you are going to be able to keep this in play, get that out, and again, now every single time you're getting those mountains into play, and again, you've got a lot of ways to actually focus to get those into play, you're going to be able to dish out a lot of damage with this, which actually can just be very fantastic. Again, to any targets your opponent's faces, creatures, etc., etc. Next up, Voyager Staff. So let's talk about a way to actually utilize that commander's ETB. Again, there's not too many blink effects in mono red, but there's other ways to take advantage of it. Regardless, pay 2, sacrifice it, blink a creature, essentially bring it back to the end step. So again, your commander's ETB will be utilized again, dishing out damage to your opponents, or actually to everyone, you is included as well. And again, we'll talk about some ways to take advantage of that here in a little bit. But yeah, a way to essentially dish out a lot of damage to everyone, and again, to take out creatures, again, when you need to. Also a great way to, well, protect your commander if you need to as well. Moving on, Jaxus the Troublemaker. Now, another way to take advantage of ETBs in mono red is by copying a creature. Now, there are some things you need to consider with this. Let's read the card first. Pay red, tap, discard a card, create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control. It gains haste, and when this creature dies, draw a card, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step, activate only as a sorcery. Basically, hey, your commander, again, is legendary, of course. So if you make a token copy of it, you're making a legendary copy of it, and that is going to die because the legend rule. You still get the ETB, though, which is great. Now, keep in mind that since you're not going to be keeping that token copy, which actually I should mention that you do get to draw cards. It's kind of like a looting effect, too, actually more like a rummaging effect, regardless. Since your commander's ETB is going to be happening and it deals damage to each other creature without flying, that does include your original commander, because again, your commander is a derpy dragon that does not have flying. So it does not fly. What you can do, obviously, though, is go to combat first. Exert your commander, swing at someone that cannot take out your dragon, and yeah, it's going to have flying then, right? Exert it on the fly. Exert it in combat, so it then does have flying until the end of the turn. So then, second main phase, you can Jaxus the Troublemaker, essentially. Because again, activate as a sorcery. So yeah, second main phase, do this. And then your new commander token is going to come into play. It's going to hit all the creatures that don't have flying. Your commander has flying, so it's going to be fine and stick around. Be careful with this, again, when you are copying your commander, because your commander does need flying to avoid its own copy board wipe. There you go, okay? Next up, Flamebrush Rider, another way to do this, and actually one in combat. Hey, 3/3 Human Warrior. Whenever attacks, create tokens, copy another target attacking creature that's tapped and attacking. Exile token out of combat. So again, you just need to be careful with this. You need to ensure that you're like, okay, swing with my commander as well. Exert it. Ensure that you can exert your commander. Make the token copy of it. And with this one, you can dash it in. You probably just want to do that anyways because, it can swing right away, number one. Number two, again, this does not have flying, so your commander will take this out. Your token commander copy, essentially, will take it out again with that board wipe effect. So yeah, keep that in mind. Again, when you are making token copies, make sure you're exerting. Make sure your commander has a way to survive its own copy board wipe, okay? But now that we've talked about the budget buys, let's move on to the pricier picks. And one that I really want to highlight first is going to be Witch's Clinic, a fantastic card. Temporary colorless, pay 2, tap, target commander gains lifelink until end of turn. Again, your commander does not inherently have lifelink. Unfortunately, that would be great for you. Also, when it comes to equipment that give lifelink, like a Locksmith Warhammer, unfortunately, with your commander, since it's an ETB, you can't just be like, okay, I equip my commander. Now, there are certain ways to, like, it might be a sorcery, or hopefully, I think it's an instant, actually, for a single red that can actually equip instant speed. There's not many ways to equip your commander instant speed, though, so, yeah, you're going to have to focus on some different ways to give your commander lifelink, like this one. This is a fantastic one. I wish it was budget-friendly. Wizards, reprint it, please. But yeah, giving your commander lifelink, again, essentially be like, okay, how much damage is my commander doing? Okay, there's like 10 creatures on the board, maybe. My commander's dishing out, say, 7 damage, or 10 damage, or whatever it is. And yeah, and also everyone's faces, too. So you can gain easily 100 plus life every single time your commander's trigger happens if you've got something like this. So again, you're padding your own life total, then you're completely fine to burninate things down to the ground. Again, you're taking advantage of this more than your opponents. You're able to kind of stay ahead of your opponents in that way. So yeah, lifelink is incredible with this commander. Any way that you can potentially give your commander lifelink and instant speed, make sure you are considering. Next up, Sulfim Mayhem Dominus. Another way to really take advantage of our commander's trigger, and one that is fine. This one is a 5/4 non-flyer, but it's going to be able to survive. Here we go. If a source you control deal non-combat damage to an opponent, or a permanent an opponent controls deals double that damage to that permanent or to that player or permanent instead. So basically, hey, I'm only taking half the amount of damage that you all are taking. Again, if I've got 10 mountains in play, I take 10, you take 20. That's going to make it so that your clock of getting taken out is a lot quicker than mine. And of course, your creatures, if you somehow had a creature that was large enough to survive 10 damage or whatever it is, it's now taking 20, so it's going to be taken out. Yeah, I mean, again, if you've got a World Spine Worm, it's gone. I mean, you get your 5 worms, but anyways. So, also, though, pay 1 Phyrexian red, discard 2 cards, put an indestructible counter on this. Yeah, you're going to want to do that. This is now, again, a way to really take advantage of your commander as well, because your commander is going to be wiping the board. This is going to have indestructible, though, and it's going to stick around. So, again, it's just another creature that you can utilize, in combat, that your opponents aren't going to be able to block, probably because they don't have any creatures. And also, again, it just stays in play. A great way to double up the damage, a great way to really take advantage of your commander's trigger, and yeah, just a great card overall. Next up, Fire Emancipation. This one really accelerates things, but again, keep in mind this one accelerates things for you too. So make sure you've got other ways to take advantage of that, again, whether that's lifelink or, again, ways to double up the damage on your opponent's other things. Base source you control deal damage to a permanent player, deals triple that damage to that permanent player instead. A fantastic card. One that can be a one-shot KO, essentially for the entire board, probably in combination with this commander. Again, just keep in mind that you need a way to probably really take advantage of your commander's trigger so that you can actually benefit more than your opponents. Again, lifelink, great, you're fine. So yeah, make sure you are considering damage doublers, damage triplers, and again, especially ones like Sulfim, Mayhem Dominus, that benefit you more. Again, they did when dealing damage to your opponents or their things, it doubles that up or triples that up. I guess there's not a tripler that just does it to your opponents, but you know what I mean. Next up, Valakut the Molten Pinnacle. Again, yet another land that is not a mountain that you should be considering if you got the budget for it. Enters the battlefield, tap. Whenever a mountain enters the battlefield under your control, if you control at least 5 other mountains, you have Valakut the Molten Pinnacle, deal 3 damage to target creature or player. Basically, hey, another way to essentially lightning bolt again and again and again every single time you have a mountain come into play, which again is going to be quite a bit. Doesn't add your mountain count itself, but again, you can make certain kind of, exceptions for certain non-basic lands, and this is one that can help you out a lot throughout the game, so definitely one to consider. Next up, Walking Atlas. This one, okay, first up, I always want to point this out because Wizards probably needs to reprint this card at some point just because, well, I think it should be more budget-friendly, number one. Number two, I mean, I think it's just above $1, but regardless. Get it more budget-friendly, please, Wizards. Regardless, hey, there's a bit of a mistake on this card. It says creature construct. This is clearly an artifact. So it is an artifact creature construct, obviously. Just want to point that out. Regardless, tap, put a land card from your hand on put a land card from your hand on the battlefield. So kind of like a Sky Shroud Ranger type effect, but again for any color. So again, another way to get more and more mountains into play. A great way to land ramp when it comes to other colors as well. Again, pairs really well with something like Koth, getting lands, getting them into play. Can be a great card for, again, a commander like this. Conjurer's Closet. Artifact for 5, beginning your end step, you may exile target creature control, turn the battlefield under your control. Just a free way to blink, essentially. Every single turn at the beginning of your end step, you get a free blink effect. Again, a commander that has a great ETB like this one. Yeah, just more and more damage being able to be pumped out with that. Again, your opponents, well, and yourself won't last very long. But yeah, if you've got ways, again, to take advantage of your commander's trigger more than your opponents do. Sulfim, again, Witch's Cottage, those kinds of cards, you've got ways to essentially really, or is it Witch's Clinic? I think it's Witch's Clinic. Regardless, ways to take advantage of it. You can really take things out really quickly with this. Twin Flame, again, there are also really good copy spells at the higher budget as well. 2 mana. You could also strive this if you want to for an extra 2 in a red. basically get a copy of a creature. So again, for 2 mana, you are being able to get your commander's ETB. Again, please keep in mind, do not make this mistake. Don't go first main phase, Twin Flame. Oh no, I blew up my commander. Yeah, you want to make sure that, again, if you don't want to have to recast your commander, and sometimes you might want to, you actually might want to take out your own commander again so that you can recast it, so you can get that trigger again, essentially. But if you don't want to do that, make sure you go to combat, exert your commander, swing at someone that's going to survive against, fly, and there you go. Then do it, second main phase. So again, keep that in mind, because again, your commander token copy will take out your original commander if it doesn't have flying. Moving on, Cursed Mirror. Just an artifact, a mana rock that can really help you out a lot. It's a great card. I wish they'd reprint it. Tap for a red. As it enters the battlefield, you may have become a copy of any creature on the battlefield until entering step as haste. So again, if your opponent has a great creature, sure, take advantage of that. You know, take one of your opponent's creatures. Not take it, but, you know, make it a copy of that. But more likely, again, just another way to copy your commander, and just on an artifact as well, just on a mana rock, essentially. So yeah, again, this will get taken out, but that's okay. But yeah, if you need it earlier, just say mana rock, use it as a mana rock. Next up, Blade of Selves, a great card for this commander. Equipped creature has Myriad, so basically whenever it attacks for each opponent other than the one that's attacking, you get a token that's attacking the other players. So essentially, again, get 2 triggers off of your commander from attacking. So again, swing with your commander, exert it. Make sure you are exerting it so it has flying. And also then you get your 2 token copies of your commander, which each have their ETBs triggered. They will go away because they legend rule, but yeah, you get a ton of damage. Again, if you got 10 mountains in play, that's 20 damage to all creatures out flying in each player. This can get pretty out of control and pretty crazy. But yeah, this is a really interesting commander. Again, one that has a very kind of interesting play pattern where, again, you're going to be damaging yourself. You need some ways to take advantage of it more than your opponents, but you also, again, have some super cool plays, again, like, you know, the Witch's Clinic or whatever it's called, to, you know, give it lifelink at instant speed to gain a ton of life from this. You know, you're going to be able to focus, you know, not many mono red decks are like, I really want to focus on getting a ton of lands into play to land ramping, but I think it's a really cool way to go about it. Again, I like the design of this commander. There's an interesting push and pull, and again, a dragon that apparently gets so tired if it flies that it has to take a nap. So, kind of funny. Regardless, if you haven't seen my most recent episode from the end of the day yesterday on Elenda and Azor, my goodness, this is a really cool commander. One that can draw you an absurd amount of cards and make you an absurd amount of tokens. Oh my goodness, this is just absolutely crazy. You gotta check it out, so make sure you do that. But yeah, before you do, make sure you comment below. Let me know your thoughts on this brand new dragon. Yeah, if you are interested in this commander, make sure you check out that card list link in the description below for all the cards I talked about in this episode. And of course, make sure you're staying tuned for more quick takes and spoilers and other exciting episodes as well. And as always, thanks again, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.